For Pacifica Radio, I'm Christina Onnested. It's Super Tuesday. Presidential primaries are being held in 16 states and Samoa. Hundreds of delegates are at stake, the biggest haul for either party on a single day. A movement is growing in the Democratic primary to vote uncommitted in protest of President Joe Biden's support of Israel's war in Gaza. Nikki Haley is continuing her campaign against frontrunner Republican Donald Trump. Eyes are also on Congress, where Republicans have a slim majority in the House and Democrats have a slimmer majority in the Senate. Control won't be decided today, but voters will set the matchups for some of the most competitive races in November. California voters could elect the only black woman to the U.S. Senate. That's progressive Barbara Lee, though Los Angeles Democrat Adam Schiff, who argued Donald Trump's impeachment, has racked up endorsements from Democratic establishment, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Governor Gavin Newsom. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously former President Donald Trump's name can remain on the Colorado primary ballot after the state removed him over his role in the deadly January 6, 2021 Capitol insurrection. At issue was a provision in the 14th Amendment that bars those who've sworn an oath to office from taking office if they've engaged in insurrection. Max Pringle reports.
Erwin Chemerinsky is dean of the UC Berkeley School of Law.
All 9 justices, while they didn't agree in the same opinion, came to the conclusion that it shouldn't be for a state by itself to be able to keep somebody from being able to run as a candidate or hold the office of president.
The ruling ends similar efforts in Illinois and Maine to keep Trump off the ballot. Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold told MSNBC Monday that she disagrees strongly with the ruling.
I do believe that states should be able, under our Constitution, to bar oath-breaking insurrectionists.
The court avoided commenting on whether the former president did actually incite the January 6th mob to insurrection. The liberal justices, Sonia Sotomayor, Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Elena Kagan ruled Trump should remain on the ballot, but disagreed with the conservative majority that Congress needed to pass a law to enforce the 14th Amendment.
What's troubling is that this effectively reads Section 3 of the 14th Amendment out of the Constitution. It says that this is a provision of the Constitution that will only be enforced if Congress acts. But why should we leave any provision of the Constitution to the political process? The whole point of the Constitution is to limit what the political process can do.
I'm Max Pringle.
A former Trump Organization chief financial officer pled guilty to lying to investigators Monday in the New York civil fraud case against Trump for inflating the value of his assets. Alan Weisselberg surrendered to the Manhattan prosecutor's office Monday morning and entered the state court in handcuffs before pleading guilty to 5 counts of perjury. He was sentenced to 5 months in jail. Negotiators for a ceasefire in Gaza have ended without a breakthrough. The U.S., Qatar, and Egypt have spent weeks trying to broker one in which Hamas would release up to 40 hostages in return for a 6-week ceasefire, the release of some Palestinian prisoners, and an influx of aid to address the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. 2 Egyptian officials say Hamas has presented a proposal that mediators will discuss with Israel in the coming days. Hamas has refused to release all of the estimated 100 hostages it holds and the remains of about 30 more unless Israel ends its offensive, withdraws from the territory, and other demands. A new United Nations report finds reasonable grounds to believe Hamas and other Islamic militant groups committed conflict-related sexual violence during the attacks on southern Israel on October 7th and against hostages. The team also visited the occupied West Bank, where they heard concerns raised over cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment of Palestinian men and women in detention, including sexual violence in the form of invasive body searches, threats of rape, and prolonged forced nudity. Christopher Martinez reports.
Pramila Patton is Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict.
There are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual violence, including rape and gang rape, occurred.
The forensic pathologists and other experts looked at evidence like 5,000 photographs and 50 hours of footage of the attacks. The mission was not investigative, and it largely relied on Israeli national institutions. Patton described some of the challenges the mission faced, besides being unable to visit Gaza because of the fighting.
Limited, professionally gathered forensic material, inaccurate and unreliable forensic interpretation by some non-professionals, the extremely limited availability of victims and survivors and witnesses of sexual violence due partly to the internal displacement of affected communities.
Ceasefire is one of the recommendations in the new report, along with Hamas releasing hostages and Israel allowing full-fledged investigations.
For the sake of the hostages, a ceasefire should be a priority. The end goal of this mandate is not a war without rape, but a world without war.
Reporting for Pacifica Radio News KPFA, I'm Christopher Martinez.
I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.